again. We are here, you are there, and together we are riding this wave we call The Sweat, a show available to billions around the world. She's Jessie Coffield. I'm Emerson Lotzia. Hockey, check. NBA,
check.
World Series Showdown picks,
check.
But when we've got a real-life doctor
almost in the house,
yes, football is where we begin. Hopefully, we'll have Dr. P here shortly with us.
Yes, the legendary Dr. Selene Parekh of the Fantasy Doctor is going to be joining us soon. But here now is our NFL panel of DK Live's Reed Fowler, Joe Holka of the Action Network, and Adam Mancuda, who hosts the All Out Blitz on Phantom Sports on NFL Sundays. So, gentlemen, we're going to talk the fantasy impact of key injuries right now, starting with Bilal Powell, who was placed on IR today by the Jets with a neck injury. Yikes. Some rumors that this could be career-ending.
Yeah, he's going to have surgery.
Like, really, hopefully not.
Yeah,
you know?
we're hoping that he will be healthy. So
our first question was going to be for the doctor, but now you want to just hop in with the guys?
Yeah, so, guys, you know the latest on Bilal Powell and everything Jessie just mentioned. So, Reed, what's this mean, though? Let's just say he's likely going to be out the rest of the season here. Who knows if he's going to play football again? What does this mean for New York's remaining backfield, though? We're talking like Isaiah Crowell and rookie Trenton Cannon.
Yeah, I mean, I think you can easily put in Crowell for that first and second down role, right? He's going to get the lead carries, much like we see in other places like Oakland, right? You see Doug Martin getting those first and second down carries. So that's Isaiah Crowell. We saw that a little bit in Cleveland last year when we had Duke Johnson. So that's his role. His role is that. We've seen Crowell do well in the past in spots where he's been able to run, Denver being one of them. But at the same time, Trenton Cannon is someone that you could potentially pick up. He is going to be that pass-catching back. If you're playing in PPR leagues, he's going to be widely available. But there's someone else, too, in that backfield that I'm interested in. Is Elijah McGuire. We saw him last year pop in certain situations. He's still hurt. He's a guy that I actually would take a look on and not spend too much of your fab bucks if you're playing a season long on Trenton Cannon. We just don't know yet what he's available to do. You can wait and see. I wouldn't necessarily, again, use your fab bucks to go out and get Crowell. There are some spots, but he's had the lead back role in other places, and he hasn't done that well. So I'm not too excited about this backfield. And it's really, it's really a team void of a lot of offensive powerhouses outside of, again, certain spots like Robbie Anderson and GPP. So in this backfield, I'm looking at Elijah McGuire, and that's it.
All right, Reed's not too excited about this backfield, but what about you, Joe? Isaiah Crowell, does he kind of get your blood flowing a little bit?
Yeah, so it's a decent price if you're thinking about him from a DFS perspective, 3,700. It's really tough to pull a trigger on a guy that's a 7.5 point road underdog. He makes a good point about how there could be other guys involved in the passing game at the running back position, but this week specifically, Chicago is second best against pass catching running backs per DVOA. So not totally interested, but not a ton of value at this point either on the slate. So it might be necessary, but I'm going to try and get away from it.
Adam, what about you? What's your interest in terms of DFS and then also season long here with the Jets backfield?
Yeah, I'm with Reed here. I'm going to completely stay away. There's really no one that piques my interest here. I actually think this helps Sam Darnold in his development. If you want to take a shot at him this week, especially coming off with the Bears, 3 straight games where they've given up a whole bunch of yardage and touchdowns. You saw Brady do it. You saw even Brock Osweiler do it the week before. I think this is going to force the Jets to throw the ball a little more. I know Jermaine Kearse was a very popular play last week, and then he put up a nice goose egg. I think he'll bounce back. They just signed Rashard Matthews this week, so he's another guy that if he gets in the lineup and he's active, I could see them going to him. I just think that this is more in terms of a long-term view for the Jets, where they knew they had to address their running back position anyway. And I think next year is where the changes are going to happen. And I really do like the call on Elijah McGuire. The guy was a stud in college. He scored a whole bunch of touchdowns, ran for 1,000 yards each of the years he was in college. But for now, in weekly leagues, I just don't like any situation for the Jets at running back. Crowell's a plotter. He's not a secure play week over week. I don't like him this week against the Bears defense. So for me, I'd avoid it at all costs.
Guys, here in New England, Pats running back Sony Michel suffering a knee injury Sunday that looked brutal based on his initial reaction.
Yeah, it did.
Very bad. But reports are he's only going to miss a week or two. So, Adam, with Michel out, is James White a lineup blocker, or are the Pats just never that obvious?
Yeah, I think that in this situation, most times you would say we don't know what the Patriots are going to do, because in some situations, Kenjon Barner might come up and be a solid back. But look, they have the utmost confidence in James White. He should have been the Super Bowl MVP 2 years ago in the comeback win against the Falcons. This coming from a Pats fan who obviously was crying 3/4 of the way through the game. But for me, James White, he scored all the touchdowns. He's an excellent receiver out of the backfield. His price is creeping up, though, so you may want to look at the other options in that price range. But I think this week against the Bills, they're going to have the extra day to prepare on the Monday night game this week. So I think they'll obviously incorporate him as much as possible. I love White. He's a PPR monster, so I love him. I'd roster him wherever I could.
Joe, is it time to lock James White into your lineup?
Yeah, I'm not playing James White at 7,200. I just think that there's still a chance that the Patriots go out and sign someone to kind of play that role that Michel was playing at the goal line. I see that he had 11 rush attempts last week, but I don't think that's necessarily what they want to do with him going forward. I think maybe he obviously has value, but it's at 7,200. There's just so many guys that have a higher touch floor, and on this large strip slate, he's going to be on the full Thursday to Monday slate. I'm honestly not really that interested at 7,200.
Reed, are you balking at that $7,200 price tag?
Yeah, because he got his career high carries last week with 11. This guy doesn't really catch the ball, or carry the ball, excuse me. And we kind of see what we saw with Christian McCaffrey last year, where he, is really utilized in the pass game, and they trust James White a lot, right? So from a real life perspective, it's fantastic for New England because they can put that guy back there and they can really trust what he can do. But from a DFS standpoint, that price tag and that leverage point is way too high. There are guys on the slate that I'd like a lot more because there is a narrative in this Buffalo game. Now, Buffalo has been good against the pass, obviously Tre'Davious White being a cover corner, and they've been decent against the run. They're probably middle of the pack in terms of giving up DK fantasy points to running backs. But 7,200 for a guy that needs to get double-digit catches and a touchdown to really return value at that price. I'm saying Wayne season long is an RB1. You like him if you kept him. Sony Michel, obviously, that's good news that he's not. It's not a season-ending injury. So James White and season long, absolutely DFS thing away.
Dr. Selene Parekh, welcome to the program. Why do you always have to act like you're busy and you have stuff to do? Come on.
I need to find a way to feel important, man. That's the way I got to do it.
It's all
like
good,
you're
dude.
a doctor. What could you be doing?
Yeah, right?
Like,
Seriously, stop saving lives
saving
all
lives,
the time.
whatever.
Hey, but since we have you here, we're talking about this knee injury for Patriots running back Sony Michel. Sometimes an injury looks awful at first, turns out to be nothing major. Other times a player walks off and you later find out it's a torn ACL.
Very bad.
So are these initial reactions all just about the individual's pain threshold as opposed to a sign of the actual damage done here?
Well, I think part of it is the individual's pain threshold, and the other part of it is the scenario and the mechanism of that injury. If you looked at the injury with Sony Michel on Sunday, it looked pretty bad. That whole knee really twisted. He was screaming in pain, and I thought he was done for the season. I thought an ACL or a meniscus tear at minimum. So to hear a sprain, great news for Patriots fans. But I think it all just depends on pain thresholds and the scenario of the injury.
Now, Doc, Dolphins wide receiver Albert Wilson suffered a hip injury Sunday, and the team fears that it could be season-ending. It looked like a standard football play, really running full speed, gets tripped up, goes down. So how much does the angle and speed of the fall impact the severity of an injury like that?
It's actually critical in this scenario because the hip is like a ball with a cup. And depending on the angle and the speed of which you kind of push those two together, you can actually pop part of the head out. And then you can have a labrum tear, which is the bumper of the cup. And so that's the belief that he has a labral tear. We're optimistic that he can be treated without surgery, but don't be surprised later in the season to hear that he needs surgery.
All right, so after all that, Joe, we talked a little bit yesterday about how Wilson's injury could result in more targets for guys like Danny Amendola. I know you were not with us yesterday, but do you think Kenyon Drake could benefit from this with more passes thrown his way as well?
It's possible. I mean, they're a team that's run the second fewest plays in the NFL this year, is still splitting carries with Frank Gore. So I'm not sure how high his touch floor is. I'm a little bit nervous. Houston's been really good against the run, second fewest yards per carry. They've only allowed one rushing touchdown on the year, actually, and they've been kind of middle of the pack against pass catching backs. He's probably got a shot for 8 carries, maybe 4 to 6 receptions. I'm just not really taking a shot on a guy in the Thursday night game with that few of touches.
Yeah, that's a good point. It is a Thursday night game. So, Reed, with Wilson's injury, you think Kenyon Drake benefits at all here?
Maybe, right? I mean, those targets have to go somewhere, and if you're really looking at it, or those touches, right? And what Gase has done is he really hasn't shown an affinity to give Drake the lion's share of the carries, or really put a lot of trust in him. Joe's right; he's still splitting time with Frank Gore. But if you look at now in the passing game, you have to tie, you have to sort of anchor this to Brock Osweiler. Brock Osweiler, when he was with Houston, Lamar Miller only saw 3 targets per game. And if he really keys in on one receiver, we saw in 2015 in Denver, Demaryius Thomas was 7th in targets. Now Nuke in 2016 was 26th in targets. And so you figure that with Brock behind center for as long as potentially for the rest of the season, or however long Tannehill is out, those targets should be going to receivers. And so Drake, to me, again, like Joe said, in the Thursday night showdown, I'd rather put some stake in Jakeem Grant, who has a higher ceiling than Drake.
Adam, where do you sit on this? How high of a ceiling does Kenyon Drake have? You got to consider Thursday night game. It's typically not great play. These guys are on short rest. It's Brock Osweiler throwing them the football.
Yeah, I'm not high on Drake that much at all, and I think Osweiler, to me, is the biggest reason why. He's had 2 good weeks in which he's put up points. Last week was a little more garbage time in terms of points and his production. They haven't been giving, to Reed's point, they haven't been giving Drake the ball. I think someone that actually may benefit a little bit here, and I think they're going to try to showcase him right before the trade deadline, is Devontae Parker, who wasn't even active last week. But I think he gets involved this week because, again, he's a talented guy. You see with all the trades going around the league, all the guys that are getting traded for 3rd-round picks, 4th and 7th-round picks, Devontae Parker happens to be a very talented receiver. He just doesn't fit in that Miami scheme. So if you're a team that's in need of a wide receiver, like a Cleveland or even a Dallas, if they're looking to even further enhance their wide receiver core, I would certainly take a look at Parker. He's a couple years removed from being a 1st-round pick. So for me, they're going to try to showcase Parker in this game on Thursday night, and that's where they're going to go and where you could possibly get some value.
Yeah, Parker not very happy with his usage right now, and well, neither is his agent after the what he had to say over last weekend. We got one more for you here, though, Doctor. Aaron Rodgers hopes to play Week 8 without a knee brace, something he's worn since suffering a knee sprain in Week 1 against Chicago. What's the downside to not wearing it? Is this just a comfort thing for him, or you think it's been long enough for the knee injury to heal up?
I think it's been long enough for the knee injury to heal up. Between the MCL sprain and the bone bruise, that knee brace was really protecting him. But no matter how agile you are, the brace does limit some agility. So to now be able to play in a critical game against the Rams without a knee brace, I think you start seeing more of that flare back with Aaron Rodgers this week.
So, Reed, as we discussed on Tuesday, Cobb and Allison could return. And if Rodgers is feeling fully healthy, how much of a rushing threat could he be? He's facing, a strong Rams defense.
Yeah, I think you always, as a defense, you also have to guard against that. He's never really considered a dual threat in the, sort of the literal sense. But Rodgers is a guy who rolls out. He is a guy who can elude a lot of the defensive tackles, defensive linemen who are going after him. But you have some speedy linebackers for the Rams. You have Ramik Wilson is kind of a speedy guy, but you have Corey Littleton, Mark Barron. These guys are cover linebackers as opposed to thumpers in the middle. And so those guys, like anything, right, you're going to guard against that QB swing out that Rodgers always does. Over the last 3 games, he's seeing about 3 carries, Rodgers is, 3 or 4 carries. And so he is getting more comfortable. You also have to guard against it. I don't think we see a huge game, obviously, running the ball. I think these guys are going to be down for most of the game. I think it's going to be close. And so I think there's going to be a lot of passing and less running. So not necessarily staking my claim in Rodgers' rush ability, but his pass ability.
Adam, we saw what he could do with 1 leg. What can he do with 2?
Yeah, I'm not the biggest proponent of Rodgers going to run the game in this game, and here's the reason why. Rodgers, I think this is the game that I think the stat is, this is the largest he's been an underdog in any game in his entire career. I think the line was 9.5 the last I saw it. So what that means to me is they're going to be down big, they're going to be down big early, and they're going to have to play catch up through the air. I also think by getting Cobb and Allison back, that should open things up for guys like Graham and Valdez-Scantling, and potentially the running game, which has been basically stuck in quicksand the entire season. So to me, that opens things up for Aaron Jones and potentially Williams as well. But for me, I just think that the other receivers are going to just spread things out, and that's how they're going to try to attack the Rams. That's what the Vikings did a few weeks ago. And to me, that's the best way to try to attack that Rams secondary.
Joe, do you agree with these guys? He's going to be passing the ball?
Yeah, I go back and forth. I don't think that the rushing thing is that big of a threat. I get that, yeah, he's getting healthier and healthier, but the Rams have allowed the second fewest yards against quarterbacks on the ground this year. I do think that the biggest matchup is going to be this Green Bay Packers offensive line that's played extremely well this year. PFF has them ranked number 1 in the league against this Rams pass rush, who's actually number 2 in the league. So I think that's where the big matchup's going to come. But I agree. I think that through the air, Rodgers has a chance to have some success.
Hey, Reed, a quick question on Facebook real quick, because we don't bring you guys back until the end of the show. It's a flex start question. Taylor Gabriel against the Jets or Christian Kirk against San Francisco? This guy's studs are on bye.
Wait, say that again?
So you have Taylor Gabriel against the Jets or Christian Kirk against San Francisco? What do you think?
I think Taylor Gabriel's going to bounce back spot. I mean, the Jets, you're always attacking that slot cornerback with the Jets. And so for me, it'd be Taylor Gabriel.
Okay, cool. Good stuff. Dr. P, you are free to go. The rest of you guys hang tight for a little bit. We're going to have you back at the end of the show. As I just mentioned, we have some NFL over-under to play. But first, NBA building blocks with Julian and Action Matt LaMarca right after this.
One note on defense special teams. I got a question from A. Snipes. He said, we've had this does defense debate matter for fantasy, but as a DFS position, does defense matter? With defensive scoring being high variance and offenses scoring more points than ever, is it viable to punt the position each week? Yeah, so I had actually already wanted to talk about this before I got this question from A. Snipes, but it's crazy, but these days the salary disparity on DraftKings between the best in-play quarterback and the worst in-play quarterback is almost the same as the best defense and the worst defense. In other words, like the salary difference between Jameis Winston and CJ Beathard was about $1,500 or was exactly $1,500. And the salary difference between, Jaguars D and Jets defense last week was $1,500. Now we know that, quarterback results are really clustered and the salary on DraftKings now accounts for that. But I still think that the floor ceiling combos for quarterbacks are far, 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 far easier to project than that of defense/special teams. Like, I know Jameis is going for 20 at a minimum, and the Jags defense could easily at 2, as we saw. So I think all season I've been quote unquote spending up at quarterback more this year than ever. But even though it's really not spending up anymore, right? Like the difference between the best and worst is as simple as taking a cheap defense, right? Like if you go down from Jaguars to Lions, you get to upgrade from Beathard to Wentz or something like that, right? And I'm always going to take that. So the way that DraftKings is pricing quarterbacks now has just changed a ton, has like a big ripple effect on roster construction, I think, where it often makes sense to pay more at quarterback at the expense of defense a lot of times.
It's been a while since Julian Edlow has joined the program, so what a special treat it is to have him here, as well as Mr. Action Matt LaMarca. Grab this dude's app on iPhone and Android right now.
We have you guys here to play some NBA building blocks. So who you are building your team around for tonight's slate? Julian, who's your dude at center?
Yeah, so at center, I got to go DeAndre Ayton here. His only bad game this season came when he went up against Nikola Jokic and picked up 5 fouls. He had a really bad game, but you look at his game log, an up-paced game against the Warriors. He had 47.5 DraftKings points. He's going up against the Lakers tonight, who have allowed no fewer than 124 points in a game this season. They play one of the fastest paces in the NBA. They're averaging just about 132 points allowed this season. So I really like Ayton in this spot in a really up-paced game to be getting a lot of boards, getting a lot of points in that up-and-down game.
He'll cost you $7,300. Matt, who are you going with?
Yeah, I like Ayton as well, but I'm going to go a little bit cheaper. I'm going to go with Enes Kanter for the Knicks. This guy's always been an elite per-minute scorer for fantasy purposes. He averaged 1.25 DraftKings points per minute last year. He's at 1.31 DraftKings points per minute through his first 4 games this year. The big difference is just that the Knicks are much more short-handed in their front court this season. Kristaps Porzingis is out with a knee injury. He could theoretically miss the whole season. They no longer have Kyle O'Quinn to soak up minutes at the backup center position. So as a result, Kanter's playing big minutes to start the year. He's averaged 31.5 minutes per game through their first 4 games, which would be a new career high for him. So I think he's just too cheap at $7K. He's going to continue to do what he does. He's just doing it for more minutes per game than we're used to seeing it from him.
Matt, small forward or power forward? Give it to me.
Yeah, I'm going with a guy you could play at either spot, and that's Kyle Kuzma. I think he's got a great floor today, given the Lakers' suspensions to Brandon Ingram and Rajon Rondo. He played 45 minutes in their last game. Now, granted, that one went to overtime, but he still should see around 40 minutes today. He averaged just under 1 DraftKings point per minute last season, and he's at a similar mark through their first 3 games this year. Excellent matchup against Phoenix. They were dead last season in defensive efficiency. They don't figure to be much better this season. The Lakers' implied team total of 121.5 points, second highest mark on the slate. So give me a guy who's going to play 40 minutes in arguably the best game environment of the day, and I'm all for it.
Yeah, for sure. North of 52 fantasy points in that game, too, against the Spurs. Julian, who's your guy here at this position?
Yeah, I mean, for starters, Kyle Kuzma is definitely the forward play on this slate. Just like I highlighted Ayton, like this game is perfect to stack, and Kuzma coming off those minutes with all those points is a fantastic play. But if you want to go a little bit cheaper, my guy is Jaren Jackson Jr. here. He's played between 25 and 28 minutes in each of his first 3 games. And he flashed a 42 DK point upside in one of those games. With JaMychal Green out now for the foreseeable future with that broken jaw, Jackson's been in a starting role, and he's been responding really well. So he's got a great matchup against the Sacramento Kings tonight. They'll probably be starting Marvin Bagley, so he'll be going up against a rookie who's not all that good of a defender. So I really like Jaren Jackson Jr. at $5,400 tonight on this slate if you want to save some money at forward.
Julian, how about guard, shooting guard, or point guard? Who are you going with?
Yeah, you can play this guy at both, and it's Zach LaVine for $7,400. Chris Dunn finally made his season debut after sitting out for personal reasons the first couple of games, and then sprains his MCL in the first game back. So the backcourt goes right back to kind of Zach LaVine's place to run. He'll be playing at both guard positions. He's going up in a great matchup against the Charlotte Hornets. I mean, this guy's averaging 35 minutes a game this season. He's yet to score fewer than 40 DraftKings points in any individual game. So I see no reason that those trends are going to stop tonight.
Yeah, he went 30, 33, 34. So pretty good, even though he's committing a lot of turnovers. When you're putting up numbers like that, who cares? Matt, who are you going with?
Yeah, I'm going to go a little cheaper for my guard pick. I'm going with Wesley Matthews. Definitely a little bit of a scary guy to plug into your lineups. He can be a little bit volatile with his jump shot in particular. But right now, it doesn't really matter. He's playing a lot of minutes. He's been playing right around 34 a game. The Mavs are pretty short-handed with Harrison Barnes and Devin Harris out of the lineup. And he's been good in his playing time. He's averaged 0.88 DK points per minute. And again, that's without him really making a jump shot yet. He's shooting sub 40% from the field and just 34.5% from three-point range. So if he does start actually making some jumpers, he has a huge ceiling, especially in a nice matchup against the Hawks. They've played at the fastest pace to begin the season, and the Mavs have a huge implied team total, 119.25 points. That ranks third on the slate. So I think Wes Matthews is a really nice play, all formats, and you're going to need to save some money because there are a lot of good guys to pay up for.
Yeah, he might be scary, but 27, 28, 34 DraftKings points in his last 3 games, so not that scary.
I'd take it, Matt. That's certainly correct.
Yeah.
Great
Let's do
work.
it. Let's do it again, Wes.
Let's go.
Great work by both of you fine gentlemen. Julian, you down for some hidden jewels a little later?
Oh, we're down for some hidden jewels. We got some good ones tonight on an 11-game slate.
Get ready, Matt.
Excellent. We'll do that.
Love it.
After we put this show on ice.
What's going on? I'm Brendan Glasheen here with your DraftKings Fantasy Flash. David Price is feeling dandy after winning his first postseason game as a starter last week in Houston. He said Tuesday, prior to Game 1 of the World Series, he feels lighter. A weight has been lifted off his shoulders. Boston's high-priced lefty earned 33.7 DK points against the Astros, the most over his last 5 starts, including the playoffs. And speaking of high-priced, David Price is a Showdown contest high, $13,400. The Sox starter has loosened up after last week's Nails performance, but the cold weather definitely plays a role in my book. Price goes from comfortable low 70s in Houston to the low 40s in Boston. The last time he made a start in those conditions was back in April against the Yankees. He only lasted 1 inning and left the game complaining of poor circulation in his extremities. And last point, while Manny Machado likely receives loud boos from the Fenway faithful yet again, he's usually plenty relaxed against Price. All-time Machado is 12 for 41, a .293 batting average with 5 home runs and 8 RBI versus Price. I would think long and hard before giving Price a spot in your Game 2 lineups.
Welcome back to the Sweat, where we have 4 games on the fantasy hockey docket tonight. And riding solo this evening, that's Sean Newsham of the Action Network.
Don't worry, Sean. We're here to keep you company. So let's do some price check of the guy in action this evening. Austin Matthews is 7,700 visiting Winnipeg, but hasn't scored a goal in 3 games after lighting the lamp 10 times in the Leafs' first 6 games. So how much should people consider rostering this guy for that price tag?
Yeah, it looks like I scared Joe off tonight all the way over to the NFL content.
Yes, you did.
But, Austin Matthews is still a very great play tonight against a Winnipeg team that is a strong team. But if you look at the underlying stats with Matthews, despite him not scoring over the past 3 games, all the underlying stats remain the same. His shots are still there. His ice time's still there. His power play usage is still there. Over the course of his career, the 4 games he's played against Winnipeg, him and Patrick Laine have a bit of a rivalry dating back to when they were drafted, with Matthews going first. And he has 1 goal and 8 assists in the 4 games against Winnipeg. So I think Austin Matthews is still a very strong play, despite not scoring his last 3 games.
All right, well, how do you feel right now about the highest priced winger on the slate? Jonathan Marchessault in Vegas, highest priced winger, just north of 7,000, had 9.5 fantasy points his last game out.
I love Marchessault. He's probably my favorite play on the entire slate, honestly. You look at Marchessault, he's top 10 in the league in shots overall. He's a guy that goes out there and fires the puck to the net. And you have a very strong matchup tonight against a Vancouver team that could be without Brock Besser and Elias Pettersson as well. So you have a Vancouver team that was already a very poor team against a Vegas team that is leading the slate in shots on goal. So for me, Marchessault is easily the best play. In the last 2 games, he's had 14 shots on net with 3 goals. So I think he's the strongest play on the entire slate.
All right, Jets D-man Dustin Byfuglien is off to a slow start by his standards, 4,800 at home against Toronto. Do you like this price point, Sean?
Yeah, I think it's a nice price point for Byfuglien. You see a little bit of a reduction from what he's been over the previous seasons due to the fact that he's had a slow start. I think Toronto, as we've discussed over previous shows, doesn't play many defense. So when you have a team that doesn't play much defense, you have a guy like Byfuglien who can go out there and really do what he's good at, and that's shooting the puck to the net. He finally has seen his ice time jump back up. He was a bit injured earlier in the season, but last game he ended up with 28 minutes of ice time. And he's a guy that his long-term shot production is very strong. He's in the 90th percentile for defensemen. So I think it's a really nice spot for Byfuglien, and you get him at a reduced price point over what you normally would get him at.
All right, here we go. Lightning goaltender Andrei Vasilevsky on the road at Colorado, priced at 7,700. Is that something you might be interested in here? Sean kind of had an up and down weekend.
Yeah, goaltender tonight's really difficult. You look at a team like Vegas and Marc-Andre Fleury in net, but the shot prediction that he's expected to face is so low due to the matchup. So even your highest priced goaltender and biggest favorite isn't really a totally great option. So you look more down the line and you find guys like Vasilevsky. For me, I think Vasilevsky does make sense. However, I think I'd prefer to go with a home goaltender, but at 7,700, I think Vasilevsky is in play against Colorado.
Taking on a Colorado club notching 3.67 goals per game, too, in 3 home tilts this season.
All right, send us off with your slate-approved pick for tonight.
So I would give Jonathan Marchessault here, but I'm going to go with his teammate instead for a little bit of savings. Max Pacioretty is a guy that over his career has been a shot producer and prolific goal scorer. His stats haven't been as elite thus far with Vegas, but he still has great peripheral stats. His shot volume looks fantastic still. And the price point that you get him at on a slate that is sort of devoid of value is fantastic. So for me, Max Pacioretty is my lock of the slate, and I look to see him get on the score sheet tonight.
Sean, wonderful job honing it down solo today. You do not need Joe to shine, okay?
No.
Showdown picks for Game 2 of the World Series is next.
Time now for the DraftKings Sportsbook Minute. I'm Pat Mayo. In a devastating, for me, Backdoor cover Monday night, the Giants return home on a short week, hosting the Redskins, a game that currently stands as a pick'em. Game total lowest of the week, 42 points. And when the line's a pick, it's usually just best to go with your gut, visualize who's going to win this game. Try it for me, please. Did you pick the Giants? Well, if you did, chances are you're a giant homer. You probably need to give your head a shake. It's not that the Giants can't win this game, but what sort of confidence level do you have in that? Atlanta and its bottom 5 pass rush was all over Eli. Skins aren't great on the defensive line, but much better than that. Plus, the Skins just knocked off Dallas and Carolina. Unless they look past the Giants, they should win here. Grab Washington as a pick. I'd even play it down to -2.5. That's the DraftKings Sportsbook Minute. I'm Pat Mayo.
Welcome back to our MLB panel, which consists of Steve Buchanan and Steve Buchanan alone.
Oh, wow.
So let's talk showdown picks for Game 2 of the World Series. What else would we be talking about?
Well, football. He's pretty good at football. We have him on our Sunday
Yeah,
shows.
but I said our baseball panel.
I know that.
So
but
there's
you
only
were
one
asking.
thing we can talk about in baseball.
Oh, you two, stop it.
Oh my God.
Sorry, Papa. All right, it's Price versus Ryu. Are you riding the David Price bandwagon after he finally picked up his first postseason win in the ALCS?
Huge.
Well, I mean, full disclosure, we have to talk about last night real quick. I mean, anybody who listened to Matt, I'm sure you didn't cash because you went all in on Kershaw, and then you didn't take Martinez and Betts. Also, there he is. Yeah. Hey, look at the fraud right over there. Yeah, Kershaw, one of the best pitchers of all time. He took a total crap on the mound last night. So if you listened to me and avoided Kershaw, you did pretty good last night. So let's get to Game 2, where I'm talking by myself. I definitely don't mind taking David Price here. I mean, we saw the strikeout potential against the Dodgers last night. Price has pitched his best baseball at Fenway Park this season. Through 93 innings this season, just a 281 WOBA at home, 282 WOBA versus righties at Fenway Park, which this lineup consists of 1 through 9. Again, like last night, the pitching options really aren't absurdly priced, so you can still get in somebody like David Price and still manage some of those big bats. So I absolutely like taking David Price here today.
Wow. Well, there were 10 relievers in total used last night, so clearly reliever is a key spot in these contests. So which one looks good for tonight?
Yeah, Jansen wasn't used last night, so if this game is close, you know, I wouldn't be surprised if they asked him to get more than 3 outs tonight. He's only 3,200. And then, this is killing me, but I think we can end up seeing some Drew Pomeranz here tonight as well.
Oh, my God.
I know. But with the Dodgers going all righty today, they're going to be pinch hitting some of those left-handed bats, and hopefully with Pomeranz in these little tiny doses can do okay against those lefties. I mean, he is far from a safe option, but he hasn't allowed a home run all season long to left-handed bats and had just a 318 WOBA against them. If he does anything good for you tonight, he's at least 2,000, so you can squeeze in some of those other high-priced bats. So I feel like even a 0 from him will still end up helping you overall because you're going to get a pretty solid lineup in there with the savings you'll get from him.
Yeah, Pomeranz is going to come out now and just have like a huge night. Crush it.
Well, yeah, I talked about him.
Yeah.
Maybe. So, yeah, obviously.
Yeah.
Maybe.
If Matt talked about him, he'd have a terrible night.
Yeah.
That's a fact. Hey, you mentioned some of the high-priced bats. What are some of the top bats you're targeting tonight?
Yeah, honestly, like these matchups are almost identical to what we saw last night. I mean, the Red Sox are going to face another left-handed bat, so obviously Mookie Betts and JD Martinez comes right to mind. I mean, just a refresher, Betts against lefties at Fenway Park, 578 WOBA with a 536 isolated power. Then we have JD Martinez, 440 WOBA with a 344 isolated power at home against lefties. And then let's not forget about Andrew Benintendi. He had a huge night last night. Obviously, the left-on-left hasn't been an issue with him. In Ryu, his worst splits are against lefties. They're not against righties. He got a little reverse split action going on there. So I feel like it could be like a good spot for him because on the surface, the left-on-left match might not be too enticing, but Benintendi has shown that he can handle that.
Okay, so those are the guys that you're going to be paying up for, and they're going to cost you. So where are you going to find some value in terms of bats on tonight's slate?
Yeah, it's kind of tough to find value unless you want to go, you know, somebody who's not playing. But, you know, that's a Matt LaMarca thing, so I'm not going to talk about that. I mean, what we have here is Kike Hernandez for the Dodgers. I mean, of all the hitters starting today, he's the second cheapest guy besides Austin Barnes, and I wouldn't recommend going with Austin Barnes. Hernandez has always been an option against lefties during the regular season. If this was a regular season game, there's actually a good chance that he'd be batting cleanup, which is what he usually did against lefties during the regular season, but he's not there today. 334 WOBA with a 185 isolated power against lefties on the season. I don't know if Price is going to have a good game or not here. I'm thinking he is, but Hernandez could be one of those guys lower in the order that can give him some issues. I think Hernandez is a good spot for a nice value play here.
All righty, Steven. Toodaloo. We are heading to the hardwood when the sweat returns.
I'm Brendan Glasheen here with your DraftKings Fantasy Flash. The Lakers are 0-4 through 3 games, but LeBron James isn't worried. The King is on an 0-3 team for the first time since his sophomore season 14 years ago. James, after the Spurs loss Monday night, here's the quote, "I know what I got myself into. It's a process. I get it. We'll be fine. I didn't come here thinking we were going to be blazing storms right out of the gate." Lakers are in the desert tonight, taking on the Young Guns Suns. Rajon Rondo and Brandon Ingram absent once again due to suspension. Look, we know LeBron attracts a ton of ownership in these DK contests, so to maximize value elsewhere, be on Kyle Kuzma, who is 6,900 on the 11-game main slate tonight. Kuzma exploded for 37 points against the Spurs Monday, shooting 60% from the field, 40 from three-point land. He also grabbed you 8 rebounds. Lonzo Ball, he gets another crack in the starting lineup. He's only 6,300, which is way down the list of point guards on this slate. 14 points, 6 rebounds, 6 assists against San Antonio, good for 30-plus DK points. Kuzma and Ball should positively impact a potential first dub for the Lake Show.
All right, well, it's the moment we've all been waiting for. It's the return of the Hidden Jewels, NBA edition. Wow, look at that face.
Wow.
Julian
You like that,
Edlow.
Matt? I'm big time now.
That's a nice graphic.
I will say this: you look better in person than you do on the graphic.
Wow,
That's a
Emerson.
compliment.
He went there.
Julian Edlow of DK Live, though, that is who this segment is named after. Action Matt LaMarca, they're here to bring the heat, but Action Matt, do you have a rebuttal to Steve's comments calling you out on your poor picks last night?
Also, that's what you were doing in the moment was like it worked out.
I just don't understand Steve sometimes. Like, I wonder if he's got pictures of me like all over his house. He can't get through a segment without mentioning me, thinking about me. It's a real problem. I hope he seeks help for it. And I want it to be known. I've thrown the gauntlet down many times. I'm ready for the head-to-head showdown with Bukes whenever he wants it. Whatever the stakes, for as long as he wants to do it, I'm game. So let's get it going.
Getting personal, I like it.
All right, man. Well, hopefully your NBA picks tonight are better than your World Series picks last night.
I got 2 bats from Cody Bellinger at like 0.1% ownership.
Okay.
All right, that's a good plan.
Okay, settle down, children.
Stop
Settle
talking
down,
about
children.
frickin' Steve Buchanan.
Settle down, children.
You
Settle
just can't
down.
escape
Settle
them,
down.
Jules.
Settle down. Everybody, take a minute. All right. Let's get into your segment, Julian. That's why we're here. You know the drill. You're going to give us your top values, and Matt's going to decide if they're good or bad, and he has the final say. So take it away.
Well, first of all, I want this to be a solo segment like Buchanan, so I can just dump all over everyone else on the show, and they can't defend themselves. But my first hidden jewel is going to be Damian Dotson, $3,500. Ever since Kevin Knox went down for the New York Knicks, he's been playing more and more minutes. Dotson played 22 minutes and scored 20 DraftKings points on Friday night. The Knicks liked what they saw, upped his minutes in the next game, 32 minutes, and he scored 30 DraftKings points. So on a slate like this, we're going to need a little bit of value. And at 3,500, a guy coming off a 30 DK point game, that's a little too much to ignore.
Matt, he's cheap. What do you think?
Yeah, Julian, you don't need your own segment because your picks are actually agreeable for the most part.
Oh, wow.
I like Dotson here. He may not see 31.5 minutes again. We have him projected for 26 at Fantasy Labs, but he's averaging basically a fantasy point per minute at this point. So he doesn't need to play a ton of minutes to have value at just 3,500. So yeah, I'm in full agreement. I think he's a really nice source of value today.
Wow, your first jewel really hit the jackpot, Julian. So let's get your second one. That is alliteration.
I like that.
Yeah.
Well, you heard earlier in the show that my favorite guard play on this slate is Zach LaVine for the Bulls without Chris Dunn, and that has some trickle-down effects. So Campaign here at $4,000 is going to draw the start at point guard as he was to start the season off without Dunn. He averaged about 25 minutes a game in games that Dunn has not played in. He's shown 25-point DK point upside in those games as well. So he gets a good matchup against the Charlotte Hornets, who haven't played much defense this season, and gets right back into that starting role. So I think he's a great value given that he's starting for only $4,000.
Matt, where do you sit on this one?
I like Payne, but I don't love him here. I mean, we've seen him bust in this role before. He scored just 10.5 points on opening night as the starter. And if 25 points is like his ceiling, I don't know if that's necessarily what I want to pay 4K for. Like, if I felt good that he could get me 20 with upside for, 30 to 40 even, like, then I would be more interested. But I just think that this offense revolves around Zach LaVine and Cam Payne. Even though he's going to be starting, he may not be like the kind of per-minute producer that we want him to be, playing next to LaVine in the starting lineup. Like, he's just going to see the ball to LaVine too much.
Ooh, brutal. So kind of like a 50-50 on that one, I guess. Julian, please hit us with your final jewel.
My final jewel, I'm going to spread this segment out a little bit. I know Marvin Bagley is my guy here at 4,800. I'll admit I was fading this guy at the start of the season. He played just 12 minutes in his NBA debut, scored about 12 DraftKings points. Since then, he's averaging 29.6 minutes and 35.6 DraftKings points, including 2 games with over 40 DK points. So the upside is all of a sudden there with Bagley. He does have to go up against the Grizzlies, which is why I think his salary dipped back below 5K, but I think he's in a good spot here. And just to adjust to the news as we go, Andrew Wiggins has been ruled out since we started the show for Minnesota. So guys like Josh Okogie, I believe his name is, at 3,400, he's going to draw the start. It's against the Raptors, but he is a cheap play. He's been somewhere around a DK point per minute. And then Derrick Rose at 4,400 is going to play more as well. So a couple bonus hidden jewels for you as well.
Matt, now you get to respond to all of those jewels.
Yeah, definitely give me Okogie on the Minnesota side. He's been pretty impressive, to start the season. And Derrick Rose, too, like, as much as he's an awful basketball player at this point in his career, he doesn't realize that he's an awful basketball player. So he continues to just shoot the ball relentlessly. And that obviously gives him some fantasy value. So I wouldn't want him anywhere near my actual basketball team, but for fantasy purposes, he's probably fine. Marvin Bagley, as Jules started the segment with, I think is the most interesting option that he's brought up. Trying to predict what the Kings are going to do on a night-to-night basis is like basically impossible. They've played Bagley for 30-plus minutes, then they've played him for 12 minutes. Like, it's just impossible to know. But Bagley is just too good of a fantasy producer that you have to take the risk with him. He's at 1.18 DraftKings points per minute to begin the season. That's just so much production for a guy that's only 4,800. So if he is going to continue to see 30 minutes, like 4,800 is just a major steal. So he's definitely worth the risk tonight, in my opinion.
So, Julian, we got all your value plays, but what about like a guy who's just a total stud that you're willing to pay up for, a guy you'd want to like build your lineup around? Who would that be for you tonight?
I mean, honestly, I think that this is a night for a balanced approach. I don't think that I'm going to be spending above $8,500 for anybody in my lineup. So that means I don't think I'm going to be playing LeBron, Harden, Giannis. That's a hot take, not a cold take. So I like Kemba Walker a lot. I love Devin Booker. I love DeAndre Ayton. Zach LaVine is a guy I talked about a lot. All these mid-priced guys, I think you can level yourself off and not necessarily need as much value or as many hidden jewels if you don't want to play them.
Matt, do you agree that you don't have to pay up for a stud on tonight's slate?
I do think that there's some value in those mid-range guys, but I'm going the opposite direction. I want the big-name player, especially considering, that we have this value now in Minnesota. We have Damian Dotson, we have Bagley, we have some of these other guys we've already mentioned. So I really want to get a guy like James Harden into my lineup, or Giannis Antetokounmpo. Those are my two favorites. Giannis in particular, I think, is really intriguing. He's averaged a ridiculous 1.7 DraftKings points per minute to start the year, and that's with him posting basically career low marks in blocks and steals. We know the defensive numbers from him are coming eventually, and when they do, he has the potential to just put up an absolutely monster stat line. I mean, he's got a usage rate of close to 40% to start the season. He piles up rebounds. We know he's good with assists. So if those defensive stats come back like we've seen from him in the past, we could be looking at, 80 fantasy point upside from him.
Julian, you wrote on the NBA cheat sheet, though. You're not a super big fan of James Harden tonight against the Jazz, right?
It's a really weird spot because it's against the Jazz, so typically I would 100% fade him, but you have to remember, this is the second and final game that Chris Paul is going to be suspended. So anytime Chris Paul is suspended, James Harden is in play just because he's going to get that extra usage that Chris Paul would soak up with the ball. So I think Harden is a fine play. I probably would rather pay up for Giannis or LeBron if I was going to go all the way up for one of those guys.
Okay.
I will say Harden played a game against the Jazz without Chris Paul last season and dropped over 80 DK points, scored 56 real points against them. So it can be done even in a tough matchup.
There you go.
The ceiling's there then.
Yep. Julian's got absolutely nothing to say to that. Sounds good. Hey, how about your slate approved pick, Jules? You got something for us?
Yeah, slate approved pick. I'm stealing from Matt, but you have to go Kyle Kuzma. It's too safe. Those 35 minutes did come with overtime, but 52 DraftKings points in 45 minutes. He's got to play around 40 minutes tonight against the Phoenix Suns. It's a great matchup. It's a great pace. Give me as many Suns and Lakers as you can in that game, starting with Kuzma.
All right, your slate approved then. Going to be a Laker or a Sun here, bud?
I also really, really like Kyle Kuzma, but just to be a little bit different, I'll go back to my first pick of the night, Enes Kanter. He's the highest rated guy in the Fantasy Labs models for tonight. Super safe floor, high ceiling. He can give you it all at 7K.
He's really kicked his game up a notch since he grew that mustache too, by the way. I don't know if you guys have noticed that.
Must be good luck.
I'm being dead serious.
All right, guys, appreciate the time as always. We've got one more block to go, and it's football.
Time for your DraftKings Fantasy Flash. I'm Brendan Glasheen. We're on to Week 8 in the NFL. Injuries starting to pile up fast and furious for several teams across the league. Those New York Jets never seem to have good luck. They've placed running back Bilal Powell on injured reserve due to a neck injury. So Isaiah Crowell, 3,700 this week at the Bears, steps into more of a workhorse role. Crowell and Powell were splitting carries for the first 7 weeks of the season. This could spell trouble for fifth-year running back Crowell since he's been battling a bad foot since week 5. As for possible third down duties, insert Trenton Cannon. The shifty rookie led the Jets with 69 receiving yards in last week's loss to the Vikings. He is 3,400 this week, likely serving as New York's change of pace back when they face the Bears on Sunday. Why not? Let's look even deeper into the crystal ball. Don't forget second-year man Elijah McGuire. He is eligible to return from IR next week. As a rookie in 2017, McGuire played in all 16 games for the Jets and proved to be an adept pass catcher out of the backfield. Whew, well, that was a lot, wasn't it? Jets might as well spell MESS. That spells mess as far as the backfield is concerned for the Jets.
Great job, Brendan. Well, last block of the show here. Let's make it count. Our NFL panel is back. DK Live's Reed Fowler, Adam Mancuda of Phantom Sports, the Action Network's Joe Holka.
All right, over or under time, boys. So Ben Roethlisberger scoring 17 fantasy points against the Browns in Week 1. Will he go over or under 25 fantasy points this week at home in the rematch? Reed.
I'm going to say under here. Like Ben Roethlisberger can, and he can achieve this at some point. But look at the Cleveland defense. They've only allowed this, or teams or quarterbacks, opposing quarterbacks, have only achieved this twice. It's been Jameis Winston and Derek Carr, ironically, who's sort of been on the hot seat this past week. And Cleveland's defense really is set for the running back. So I do think this is a James Conner day more so than Ben Roethlisberger. He's only hit this a couple times against bad defenses, Tampa Bay, Atlanta, are those defenses that he's hit over this mark. So for that reason, I'm going to say under. I think it's more of a James Conner day.
Oh, we're going under. He's averaging 25. Joe, what do you think?
Yeah, I think I agree with you, but I'll play the other side of this because I do think it is close. I'll say over. More of a pace of play type of thing, though. The Browns have faced the most opponent plays per game, so it's going to be a really fast-paced game. Pittsburgh's already 8th in plays per game, so I think they get a slight boost in plays. Yeah, Cleveland's been pretty tough through the air, second lowest catch rate in the NFL. It's definitely not a perfect situation, but I think you can kind of bet on volume and talent and pace in this situation.
Adam, he's only gotten over 25 twice this year. Is he going over or under?
I actually think he's going to go over, and I think the pace of play in this one's going to actually dictate why I think he's going over. Look, the Browns weren't the same offense week one when they had Tyrod Taylor playing quarterback. They got Baker Mayfield out, as we know. He's obviously developing that rapport with Njoku and Landry. I think they're going to push the pace a little bit more. They're going to be scoring quicker, to me, against that Pittsburgh defense than under Tyrod Taylor. So that just gives Big Ben a little more opportunity to throw the ball down the field. And what I also think here is the comfort level for Ben in week 1 versus week 8 is going to be truly different. He now knows that James Conner is a solid tailback. We weren't really sure about how he was going to perform in that offense week 1. So for me, I think for all those reasons, Ben's going to go over in what I think is actually going to be a pretty high scoring game where both teams could potentially get into the 30s, because we've got to remember Pittsburgh's defense, although they've been a little bit better, they're not that great. I like Mayfield in this matchup to put a point, so Ben on this other end will do so as well.
Well, how about for 7,300 here, guys? You can have Joe Mixon, and the Cincinnati running back is facing Tampa Bay, which is 6th in the league in rush defense. Can he rebound following a tough week against KC? Let's see, 8.1 DK fantasy points. Over or under 20 DK fantasy points here, Joe?
Under for me. You mentioned how good they are against the run. It's a pretty clear funnel spot towards the pass. Tampa Bay is 32nd against the pass. Normally you would be interested in a home favorite running back in this situation, but it's a really tough matchup for a guy. In this matchup, it's just near elite for defending the run, 5th fewest rush yards against, not really on mix again at that price.
How do you feel about this one, Adam? He's averaging 16.5 fantasy points per game.
Yeah, I think this is too much for Mixon. I love him in terms of bouncing back this week, but I think 20 is just too high. I think that obviously with John Ross being out this week, obviously no Tyler Eifert anymore in the offense, and although Azuma scored last week, I think that Mixon will probably have 70, 80 yards, potentially a touchdown, but to go to 20, I just think this is not the week for that to happen.
Reed, where do you sit on this? Over or under 20 DK fantasy points for your boy Joe?
Yeah. I wouldn't say over here, actually. I disagree with the guys respectively, obviously. But look at Mixon. He's 14th obviously amongst running backs in target share, and he's hit 20-plus DK fantasy points in 2 of 5 games. Look, he's been injured in those weeks that he hasn't, and he's had some down spots. But 75% of the snaps, Gio is still hurt. I know Mark Walton is coming in and vulturing some of those, but Mixon also gets carries in the red zone. He also gets targets. And so when I look at this and we talked about game script and game flow and that last question, I think this does favor Joe Mixon quite a bit. And really, when you look at his target share and you look at his usability, and now you look at the opposite side in Tampa Bay, yes, they're really good. Their opposing receivers do really well against Tampa Bay. You pass in Tampa Bay. Mixon is a guy who should be in there a lot. Look at those linebackers on the other side. Quan Alexander just went out with ACL. You have a Darius Taylor who's not that good necessarily in the middle, now calling the plays. They just signed Kevin Minter. So a lot of these guys on defense, both in the secondary and in the linebacking core, do scare me. So I think Mixon has a big game. I think he goes over 20.
Reed, feel free to disrespectfully disagree with these guys.
No, respect. Come on, Emerson. Grow up.
Wow,
Oh my God.
grow up.
You're
Tyreek
such a
Hill,
nice
guys,
guy.
Tyreek Hill had nearly 15 DK fantasy points against Denver in week 4. Will he go over or under that mark when KC welcomes the Broncos to Arrowhead this weekend? His salary is up a lot from week 7. So what are you going to do with this one, Adam?
Well, first, I want to get a cool segment name like the other guys did with the Hidden Jewels segment, right?
Yeah.
What about something like Get on the A Train or Make the Right Read or something like that? We got to do something here and make it a little spicy.
You guys just
He's
have
shaking
to
his head no. All right, thanks a lot, Reed, for your support. Now I'm going to respectfully disagree with your head
Thank you.
Keep grinding out here, and maybe you'll make it. We'll put in a good word for you.
I don't know. That's what I'm thinking. That's what I'm hoping, right? So I'm actually going to go over on Tyreek Hill. You got to remember, in that Broncos game, he had a ton of targets that night. He didn't do much in terms of yardage, but he did see the ball a lot. I think the game script is going to go for the Kansas City Chiefs much differently at home than on the road in Mile High. That was really the first time all season that Mahomes had any adversity at all, obviously facing that double-digit deficit in the fourth quarter. I like what I've seen from Hill the last couple weeks in terms of burning defenses deep. I just think he's in the prime spot to this week to go off and have a monster game at home in the rematch. I think the Broncos are a shell of that team. I think that really was the beginning of the end for the Broncos in terms of their hopes and their dreams for this season. You saw what Chad Kelly did. I mean, maybe he was really upset that they lost that game, and he just couldn't get over it. So for me, it's Tyreek Hill over this week.
Reed, he's $8,600. Is he going to get over or under 15?
Yeah, I think he's a huge enigma, right? Because he is one play away of hitting these absurd amount of DK fantasy points. But if you look at his recent matchups against Denver, Denver has played them well, but Adam's right. You look at that defense, it is a shell of what it formerly was. And now, yes, they had a big game against Arizona, but Arizona is one-dimensional, and they run the least amount of plays. And so you can have a big game against Arizona. I do think Tyreek Hill does go under just because of the ability to run against this Denver team. And I get it. He is a hybrid guy where he can run. He takes attempts out of the backfield, and he can also break off a big play. But I think Denver has his number. I think this is an under game for me. I think you attack Denver with the tight ends and the running backs. So I think Kareem Hunt, Travis Kelce, along with Mahomes, is a nice tri-stack there you can do. And Tyreek Hill is someone that I am fading because of that.
Joe, where do you sit on this one?
Over for me. One thing that you guys didn't touch on a ton is just how much Mahomes has been throwing deep. Number 1 in the entire league with 45 deep pass attempts. And this team is going by Denver, 26 in the league at defending deep passes. The matchup just sets up perfectly for Tyreek Hill. He is really expensive, but I think that he makes 15 points pretty easily. He can make it on one play. That's how crazy this guy is.
Wow.
Joe, if you had a segment, what would you name it?
God, I don't know. We have Tears of Joy in hockey. We got to get something like that for football.
Jamming with Joe.
Jamming with Joe, like Joe's Juggernauts?
Yeah.
Or, just Tears of Joe.
There you go.
I like that. Okay, and
Touché.
Well, here we go, Joe. I'll let you take this one. Tight end George Kittle delivering 13.3 DK fantasy points to his owners the last time San Francisco faced Arizona. Does he go over or under 15 when these two clash on Sunday? Again, tight ends have not been very great fantasy-wise this year.
Yeah, it's tough. I'm going to say under 15 points, as you said, for some of these tight ends. It has to be a pretty good spot. I don't think this is a great spot against this Cardinals defense. They've allowed only 23 receptions to tight ends the entire year, 7th fewest DK points per game. I'm going to say under with Kittle.
Where are you going on this, Reed?
Yeah, I'm agreeing with Joe here, Tears of Joe. I think when you look at what he's able to do, look, he is one of the only options in this offense. But in terms of what he's able to do, I think he's tied 7th for PPR points for the last 2 weeks. And so he had a big game, and that really contributes to a lot of where he's getting his production or where he's getting that total. And he's number 1 in target share for that same time frame, tied with Zach Ertz. Now you have to look at who's throwing in the ball. What are the quality of those targets? It's C.J. Beathard and it's Carson Wentz. And so when you have those two and you really are void of a run game and any outside threat, Marquise Goodwin is someone that you always have to pay attention to, but he's been banged up. Pierre Garçon is, again, a shell of what he usually was or is. I think it's going to be tough against that Arizona team who's only giving up 14 DK fantasy points or 13. So it is close, but again, you run on Arizona. You don't necessarily pass. They have good coverage linebackers. I'm going to say under.
All right, so let's go all aboard the A train here. Over or under 15 DK fantasy points for George Kittle, buddy?
You already have a move, too, a signature move. I like
Yeah,
that.
I got the train.
He's
Let's
ready.
go. I'm going to respectfully disagree with both of my fellow gentlemen here, and I'm going to take a different read, pun intended, on this one. Reason being, look, Case Keenum looked like Joe Montana last week against that Arizona defense. So to me, why can't C.J. Beathard? I've seen enough of Beathard over the last few weeks to just think that Kittle, because of that large target share, is going to find the end zone at some point this week. So for me, I'm going to take the risk, go out on a limb. The tight end position is very, very weak, as we know. While I wouldn't necessarily roster him, I'm going to go with a guy that I love, and I know Reed loves him, David Njoku this week, in most any format I could possibly get him. If you don't want to go that route, I'd go Kittle. I don't think it's a bad matchup as much as the other guys think. And for me, who else is he throwing to? As Reed mentioned, Goodwin's still banged up. Garçon's 104 years old. To me, Kittle's the safest option on that offense, especially with Breida now banged up as well. Only played a handful of snaps last week. So for me, I go with Kittle over 15.
Guys, quick question from Facebook for all of you. Reed, Arizona or Washington defense?
Ooh, Arizona's not bad. If you're going up against that San Francisco team like we just talked about, right, you could easily get a couple picks here, a couple sacks there against C.J. Beathard. So, I mean, I'm surprised that Adam didn't compare C.J. Beathard to his boy Tom Brady, and he went Joe Montana. I appreciate that. But I'll go Arizona.
What do you think about this one, Adam?
Yeah, let's leave Brady out of this. No one compares to Brady, so stop. I'd agree with you and go with Arizona in this one. Two terrible offenses, two terrible teams. I would stay away from it, but Arizona if I had to choose between them or Washington this week.
Joe, you have to choose between Arizona or Washington. Who would you take?
Yeah, I mean, I will say that Washington has looked a lot better lately, but road defense, they are a slight favorite. Same thing with Arizona, so it's pretty close. I'll say Arizona just because they pressure a little bit better than Washington, but I do think Washington has looked a lot better the last couple of weeks.
Joe, Sean Newsham missed you tonight in the
Yeah, he
hockey
did.
segment. I just want you to know that.
He thinks he
Yeah,
scared
you
you
guys
off.
don't have to let them talk to you that way. You know that, right?
Oh, wow.
Yeah, that's fine. But
We didn't know
sometimes-
that, but thank you.
sometimes we prefer it
Now
that
we
way.
do know. We didn't know.
Okay, you three, enjoy your evening. Have fun. We'll see you back
Bye,
here,
Reed. It's always a
hopefully
pleasure.
tomorrow.
All
Yep,
right, bud.
yep. Please respectfully say goodbye to one another.
Yeah, very respectfully. This has been The Sweat. I'm Jessie Coffield. He's Emerson Lotzia. We know you love to watch us on the internet, Twitter, Facebook, YouTube.
And the app.
The
You
app.
always forget the DK
I
Live
always
app.
forget the DK Live app. The DK Live app. So be sure to tune in tomorrow at 6 p.m. We'll see you later.